Right, Morena koutou, and welcome back into the chamber for the reconvening of the Finance and Performance Committee meeting for the second day of hearings. So I'll open us with a karakia to start the morning. Mā te whakapono, mā te tuamanako, mā te tiro, mā te whakarongo, mā te mahitahi, mā te whakamaumori, mā te aroha, ka taea e mātou. By believing and trusting, by having faith and hope, by looking and searching, by listening and hearing, by sheer desire and determination, by all being done and compassion, we will succeed. Right, we have a full attendance this morning, so we will move straight into our first submission. So very warm welcome to you, Susan. You're welcome to just come up to the table at 9.
Yeah.
I get used to that.
So no, we are live recording as well.
Tēnā koutou katoa, Your Worship, elected members, council staff, members of the public, greetings. I'm Susan Leipert, a resident and business owner based in Dannevirke. Thank you for the opportunity to present another submission to Council on the draft LTB. Unfortunately, we are hearing the same complaints about lack of funding, broken funding models, and how problematic it is to balance the books whilst providing an adequate level of service without overtaxing ratepayers. Not to mention the outcry from not just the TDC, but other councils around the country over underfunding by previous councils and ageing infrastructure and compliance costs. I disagree with rate smoothing as a concept for a variety of reasons. One being that it encourages and or enables a culture that it's okay to underfund expenses such as depreciation, which then feeds into shortfalls in infrastructure replacement and or maintenance and the constant lament by councils playing catch up due to lack of funding issues from previous years. To say that TDC have a preferred option of smoothing the rates could possibly suggest that could be an early electioneering exercise in disguise of trying to make any rates increase palatable to the general public. Another is that the council seems to be comfortable in raising the debt cap to accommodate any additional funding to balance the books. There also seems to be a sense of panic, especially around the projected Year 5 debt and headroom in the draft LTP, based on Council's preferred options being in play. There will be, of course, another LTP review prior to Year 5, which would then consider any changes in the previous 3 years. My main concern is that funding providers such as DIA, NZTA and others that the Council relies on will just run out of money themselves or severely ration that which is available for general grants or in time of need for unplanned events such as Cyclone Gabrielle. There are areas that a change of rating method could make a difference to ratepayers and keep in line with the Council's view of user pays while being fair and equitable to all. Take, for instance, the UAGC, libraries and swimming pool uniform charges that could all go onto the separately used or inhabitable parts of a rating unit or SUP model. This would stop the general ratepayer subsidising those properties with multiple dwellings on one rating unit, paying only one UAGC, for example. The Mangatara flats would then be paying the UAGC and or other uniform charges for each of the 11 dwellings, rather than one charge that covers all of them. This would also mean that existing and future bills would be making a fairer contribution. When asking a senior employee at a consultation event, answers as to why this method isn't being used included politicking, how to deal with sharers' quotas, haven't thought about it, and not knowing which or how many properties would it apply to. Let's tackle these responses. Politicking suggests that there may be property owners lobbying council to make their life easier and more profitable. Those that are currently benefiting operate multiple residences as a business. So rates are a business expense which they can offset by building into the rents they charge. Sharers' quarters, unless there's a functioning kitchen as per the SUP definition, then the affected rating unit would not be charged an additional UAGC or other uniform charges. The use of this SUP methodology has been raised in previous submissions I've made. The first time I was advised that an LTP review would be a better place for this than for looking at this and not an annual plan review. However, it appears it hasn't been considered. As to not knowing which or how many properties existing that this would affect, then perhaps suggest that council's record keeping across departments may not be thorough or the information easily accessible. I question that, especially in relation to urban areas, as the SOOP method has been used on the curbside recycling rates charge. There are buildings under current construction, such as 52 Cole Street and Kaianga Ora developments, which possibly could qualify under SOOP for UAGC and other uniform charges be charged per dwelling. How many future developments would also qualify, given the expected growth under the urban development strategy in subdivision of large lots? Therefore, I support option 1, even knowing that for myself, it could mean a rates increase of up to 20%. In relation to the National Land Transport Program, I support the Council's preferred option. As previously stated, reliance on funding from outside agencies doesn't guarantee the monies that is required to allow works to be completed or even commenced. This is further demonstrated as per the Mayor's column in this week's Bush Telegraph, stating that 3.8 million has been peeled back in load road operations by NZTA, with a suggestion that changes will need to be made to the LTP or service levels dropping. As service levels drop, then it creates a potential for the public to suffer injury from falls or accidents on the lichen and moss-covered roads and footpaths, not to mention potholes. Another option I agree with is the economic and community development, a contestable fund where applications are judged on factors such as merit may ensure there is a greater benefit to the community. I support differential roading rates, which may hopefully see over time an improvement in roading around the district. Unfortunately for consumers, this may mean price increases in some local produce or products. On town centre refurbishment, I waive it. If you want user pays, then retain the north-south divide, as then the bulk of the money required is coming from those most likely to support that town. At times, I question what is council's purpose and role. Take, for instance, pensioner housing. Is one of council's core activities that of providing and maintaining social housing for the elderly? I understand that these are meant to be self-funding, but is it an appropriate activity or one that should be taken on by another agency specialising in social housing? Other councils have actually moved away from this activity. Another activity is forestry. Is the TDC a council or foresters? Would it not be better to take a loss and divest the forestry portfolio and put the monies towards debt repayment? Another council expense that has been interesting is employee costs and numbers. In the year ending 2022, 7 out of 87 employees earned over 100K, which is 8% of them. By the end of 2023, there were 21 of the 128 employees earning over 100K, or 16.4%. The number of employees over these 2 years increased 47%, or 41 people. Total personnel costs for 2022 was 7.725 million, and in 2023, 9.627 million, with the current year, according to the annual plan, being 10.005 million. Unfortunately, proposed personnel costs in the LTP are bundled with payments to suppliers, so no breakdown is given for comparison. However, if the number of staff and those on salaries over 100K continues to increase at a similar rate, then are the ratepayers benefiting from this expense increase in terms of quality employees, improved levels of service in their roles, and is this increase sustainable long term? Overall, I appreciate it can be difficult to forecast the next 10 years with uncertain climates and inflation, known and unknown legislative changes, outcomes of future local council and central government elections, and climate events. I understand that one of these issues in the near future is Three Waters reform, where there is uncertainty how that will look and different scenarios are being worked on. Does council have contingency funds for any potential outcome, or would this be something that is to be debt funded? How does this affect the Dennevirke impound water supply situation? Will urban residences be going on to water meters, which have been effective in other parts of the country in successfully changing water usage habits to one of water conservation? Does council have sufficient emergency reserves for another Cyclone Gabrielle sized event or even a massive earthquake for recovery purposes? Or is council crossing their fingers, hoping that fiscal matters don't deteriorate and agency funding will be available? Something needs to change so council ideally provides essential core services with infrastructure that is monitored, repaired and replaced in a timely manner without crippling ratepayers year after year due to underfunding, the depreciation and the like. It's all well and good saying that things should be user pays, but having areas where this doesn't get applied leaves the public cynical and thinking our old boys network is still in charge, or a general distrust in council. I don't envy your deliberations and wish you well. Tēnā koutou.
Anyone have any questions? Councillor Gilmore.
Thanks very much, yeah, Tracy. Thank you very much for your submission. I really enjoyed listening. I really enjoyed your annual plan one that you did last year as well, and taking the time to, I guess, to give us a substantive submission is really cool. So I just wanted to, I guess, open up and thank you for that. You've covered quite a few areas. I've made a heap of notes that will be really helpful in deliberations. One question though, you're looking at kind of what you were talking about, things need to change. What would be your kind of, if you were sitting in these seats, what would be your key focus areas that you would like to see change delivered in?
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Okay, I feel that councillors possibly divest in too many areas and needs to pull back to core essentials. It's nice to have the frilly stuff or the nice things. However, at the end of the day, we've got aging pipes. We have, we don't have sewers, wastewater from houses. They're just going into sections. They're not connected to a wastewater service. Little things like that, they can make a big difference. I have, every time there's a heavy rain, it floods outside my place. I now park on my front lawn so clients can park in my driveway and not get their feet wet. Things like that. It's just little things that will make a big difference. We don't need to have a forest. What's happening with the carbon credits? Is there anything, do we get any real benefit from having them? This is just a matter of coming back to basics, like anyone does on a tight budget. We just go back to the necessities and then work out from there. And once you're in a good position, then you can actually look at the pretty stuff.
I just check in what you think those nice things are.
Other places I've lived at has been things like some of the events. Does council need to actually fund them, whether it's through the community board or something else? Like I said, the pensioner housing, it's just an add-on. You may have inherited it, but do you still need it? Anything, I suppose, outside those core areas, I'd possibly class as a pretty thing.
So can I just check? So anything outside water, wastewater, stormwater and transport and roading?
Roading's important, yeah.
Libraries.
Libraries to a degree, but then, perhaps there could be community funding to improve school libraries and making them more accessible, maybe high schools or something like that. It actually covers a whole range, maybe consolidate something.
Swimming pool.
Parks and Rec, to a degree, do we need 4 or 5 swimming pools for the district? Do we need all of them?
Sorry, Councillor Johnson, just go through the chair and pop your mic on. You were saying Eketahuna.
EG one in Eketahuna.
If you divide, keeping the north-south divide, 1 each way.
Thanks for that. Are there any further questions? Right, Councillor Sutherland.
Thanks, Mayor Tracy. Susan, I just missed it. I was thinking something else. You mentioned pension housing. What was your view about that? Was that you were making a point and I just missed what it was, actually?
I don't think we should be in pensioner housing. There are dedicated agencies that do social housing. I know other councils have moved away from that. We say it's supposed to be self-funding, but all you need is a vacancy or you're taking time out to renovate a property and then that's lost income and it's no longer self-funding and it's got to be covered from somewhere.
And more, there's a couple of those bits that in your, I'll update in the response to your submission, just around some of the funding and some of the things that we are looking at as well. Right, that's awesome. Thank you very much as always for your passion and interest. Right. Right, on schedule. Sport Manawatu. Welcome to Kelly. Just get the microphone so that they can hear online as well. Thank you. And Councillor Gilmore, can I just get you to move your
Thank you so much for having us here today and listening. We would like to thank and commend you for all of your support and the value that you place on play, recreation and sport. We appreciate the essential assets, spaces, places and funding opportunities you provide that empower local participation in these activities. These investments are integral to the social fabric of our communities. We see the passion from the community for sport clearly demonstrated at local sporting events such as Tara Sports Awards and Tara Sevens. We commend you for the passion and the compassion that those of you who attended the Tara Sports Awards demonstrated for these athletes, particularly with Jamie and the special recognition. Tara District has many recreation sporting achievements to be proud of. In these financially challenging times, we thank you for providing safe, interactive, beautiful, accessible and free spaces and places for the community to be active. Places for walking, cycling, playing and exploring. As outlined in our submission, there is no denying the importance and impact of play, recreation and sport in supporting the 4 types of well-being that local government is expected to deliver: social, economic, environmental and cultural. As provided more extensively in our submission, the statistics and evidence demonstrate that play, recreation, sports keeps people healthy, physically, mentally, better quality of life, increased life expectancy, prevention of diseases, social connections, community cohesion. Engagement in play has shown to improve executive functioning, language, early math skills, and physical development. The New Zealand Sport and Education Programme found using sport as context for learning and engagement in schools resulted in improved attendance rates, decreased behaviour incidents, higher retention rates, increased engagement levels, and improved NCE level results. So all in all, play, recreation and sport is a priority to achieve a healthy, well-connected and thriving community. And given on the last submission, while following, infrastructure has no doubt importance, but the health and well-being of the community is also important. We recommend that Tauranga District Council continues to utilise He Raki Tua, which is otherwise known in your consultation documents as the Spaces and Places Facility Plan. Use this to evaluate the needs and allocate resources to accommodate the ensuing demands for facilities. In alignment with He Raki Tua, as suggested in your consultation document, there needs to be a focus on the development of multi-use facilities or hubs where a range of sports, recreation, play, education, social and other community infrastructure needs can be met. We commend you for this forward thinking. With the sinking lid policy for Class 4 gaming funding, a reduction in investment from government and a reduction in lotteries funding, codes or sports are experiencing multiple pressures on their ability to keep sport affordable. Through our work across community and health providers, Working with schools and whānau in the district, we're extremely cognizant of the accessibility, cost and transport barriers that prevent tamariki, rangatahi and whānau and all from being active. Sport Manawatu would like to recommend that we partner with Taurua District Council and other key providers to continue to develop a collective work plan and actions to address these barriers. Only by using a collective and collaborative approach to understand the barriers across the Taurua, identify opportunities, can we best support the people to be active in these difficult times going forward. Once again, we would like to thank you for the time and consideration of our submission and the ongoing support that Taurua District Council has into the sport and recreation sector across the district.
Councillor Wards.
Thanks, Rosie. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you. Nice to see you, Hinakoa. When I reflect on, the work that TDC's done in the past few years around ensuring we have a PARS strategy, and yet I'm curious for some insight from you, Kelly, as to when the rubber hits the road and there isn't a lot of money, the challenge that we have complying with or dreaming the aspirations that were reflected in that PARS strategy versus the reality of ensuring we've got roads and water and all of those. With all of that in the mix, because you've reflected on how we've done really well at covering off a lot of stuff, where would you think the priorities should be for us to focus on? Top 3 for the next 3 years across this district when it comes to that support. You've reflected on access to free stuff, support of sports awards, all of those sort of things. If we had to cut the cloth, but still be cognizant of the long-term aspirations, what would be your top 3 priorities for us to make sure we continue to focus on in the next 3 years? It's a bit of a tough question, but here we are sitting, looking at the rates, potential revenue that would be used to offset and contribute to this. Where should we focus our attention instead of trying to still do everything?
That's a great question.
Sorry.
I don't envy you. Yeah, and I just to be really clear, because sometimes there often is a disillusion around the Taurua Sports Awards costing lots of money, but actually we get sponsorship and community support, and Sport Manawatu puts funding into that, so it isn't actually a cost in that regard. So just to be mindful about that, because yes, if I was you, I wouldn't necessarily go, oh, fund that, but you don't actually fund that. It's actually community driven and supported by Sport Manawatu. So just to relate that one. I guess my question back to you, classic, but would be around what value do you place on the health and well-being of the community? So it's absolutely important, of course, to have infrastructure, but if you don't have a healthy and well community, then actually what cost is that back to the community? So yeah.
Kelly and I have done this over the years, haven't we, Kelly? But curious to understand, for instance, you've supported the Paetua swimming pool. We've had some submissions that's a nice to have. We compare well-being, is it better to have a safe road and safe drinking water contributing to well-being versus having a swimming pool? So I am going to put you on the spot, because with the long relationship that we've had with Sport Manawatu and previous staff, you're well versed in what's happening here in Tararua and where the focus should be. So I guess what I'm curious to understand is, if you looked across the next 3 years, should we focus on new playgrounds, skate park, swimming pool, or should we to the knitting and just keep maintaining what we've got and or shut down stuff? Because the money ain't going to go around and around and around forever. So I am going to put you on the spot, either you or Hinakoa, in terms of where would you put your money where the mouth is when it comes to Is it new stuff or is it looking after what we've got?
That's a really good question, and I think that's why I talk about the hierarchitua, so the principles within. Just off. Yeah, sorry. Didn't realize that. The principles within hierarchitua talk about it's evidence-based around understanding the need. So if the need is there, what is the need? So there is quite a process within that. And so I guess that's what we're advocating for, is following that process. Because I really understand that you have some really, really difficult decisions. And I think, you know, one of the things that we are focusing on at Sport Manawatu is around trying to maintain what is there and supporting, especially around clubs and codes they're going to, and schools. The schools have huge barrier for sport at the moment, being able to the cost of transporting Rakatahi in particular over to tournaments, over to just being able to participate. And so we actually look.
Can I just interrupt, Deputy Mayor, could you? It is a training exercise program. Sorry.
Conflict of interest. Just put your mic back on.
On again. So it is actually, you know, people are facing challenges that they haven't before. And so how can we keep people just, it used to be about increasing participation. Now it's about maintaining participation. Because actually there is a real danger that we have a significant drop off in regards to not people not wanting to be part of it, just but being able to be because of the cost and because of the accessibility barriers. So how can we maintain what we have?
It's maintenance mode rather than incentivizing mode. Thank you, Kelly.
Councillor Gilmore.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Kelly, always nice to see you coming in. Thank you very much for your submission and making the time to come in and talk to us. And thank you. You mentioned that it's tough times at the moment for some of our local sports teams. And I know that from some of the conversations that I've had with some of our local sports teams. So my question to you, because you have a bit more of a overarching view across the region and what other councils are doing. So in your opinion, in comparison to other councils across our region, how well do we support sport in our district in comparison to our peers?
That's a big question, isn't it? It's relative, right? Because it's relative also to the size of the community, for sure. I would say you do very positively support in regards to not only the contribution, but actually your attendance in regards to being connected to the community, which I think that's important as well, because there's one aspect of money and then there's the other aspect of actually knowing and connecting with your community in that regard. Annika, what do you have? I guess and it will come as no surprise because it is relative. Hampton North City Council obviously puts a lot of money into particularly facilities there, and they've actually increased their investment. Even it's difficult times, but they have actually increased their investment in regards to play active recreation sport.
Councillor Sutherland.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Kelly. I was just interested in your in the Paetua Pool proposal, really, which you support, but go on making quite a lot of comment about the ongoing operational costs and the project itself. So, and I guess that's something that's been touching across around the table over the last couple of days, actually, is not only the provision of the loan, but the ongoing costs. And you obviously, Sport Manawatu are obviously taking some time to make some comments about that. But up to date, just up to date, as Sports Manawatu have you had a lot of input into the proposal to date? You obviously want a lot more. You'd like to be involved. Sport Manawatu and Sport NZ would like to be involved or available to assist a bit more with this project. Have you had a lot of input to this date with the business case and other matters?
I get the feeling there's a little bit of warning about ongoing costs running projects like this in your paragraph about this.
So you're, sorry, just to be clear, if I can go through. So in regards to, if we lift it, is it in regards to facilities or running costs of? Yeah, thank you. This is such a controversy. It's everywhere, I have to say. Having the same conversations at PNCC. Yes, so Hauraki Tua is that framework. I guess I'll keep coming back to that. And I guess what we're saying is about due diligence, and it is about looking at, there's actually lots of great examples around the country, which we were really happy to connect you into to look at. There's lots of great learnings there from ones that have gone really well and ones that have not gone so well. And so actually why wouldn't use the opportunity to connect in and have a look at that so that you can make a really well-informed decision around the transparency of what comes with that space. So.
Thanks for that.
Any further questions? Thank you, Kelly and Hinikawa, for coming along.
Thanks very much.
Morena Tararoa Aquatic Community Trust. We're actually running early, so if you want to start straight away, you can get to it.
Good morning, everyone.
So we've got those couple of chairs there, but you can bring your chairs up to the side as well, so you can all come up each side of the table. And if you could use your mic, when I turn on mine, it'll turn yours off, so you'll need to turn yours on again. So it's just the talk button at the front of the mic.
You're all to it.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. And thank you very much, councillors, for giving us a bit of time this morning. We know your agenda is tight. You might be a bit running early, but we know the challenges that you have at the moment. And so I'd just like to make an apology for our chairman. He's having a well-deserved holiday off the farm. And so there's the rest of us here. And so if I could, Bryce Galloway as well can't make it this morning. So we've got John Phillips here. We've got Marion Holdaway. We've got our secretary, Tatum, back here. And we've got Philomena Bill. Where is she? There. So, yeah. So look, first of all, I'd just like to say that I want to thank you for all the support we've had over the years. And I should know more than anyone the support we've got from council. The grant that we get is so important to us, and we know the financial pressure that council is under at the moment. So we could appreciate that more than ever. You can appreciate the challenges that we also have in running a pool, and the costs. Our power particularly is horrendous. Just in one day, it surged 2,000, cost us an extra $2,000 because we get a power surge. It affects our whole system. So, it's just not budgeted for. So we just got to put up with things like that. So it's just a process. But we have got really good news. So what I thought we'd do is just very briefly tell you what's happened in the last 12 months, because we are using ratepayers' money. And back in the day, before Peter Wimsett was on the trust, we used to give a report every year to council. So we think it's appropriate just to spend a few minutes giving you some good news, and then briefly what our 10-year plan is, and what we intend to do. And you've got that in front of you anyway. So we just start off by just telling you some of the really good news. So for the first time, we've got a turnover of, we've got 1 month ago, but probably $1 million turnover. So that includes what the pool itself generates, what we brought in from outside sources, and our secretary Tatum has found another $110,000 in a very difficult climate. So we really appreciate her good work there. And it includes the adverts around the pool, which we are increasing all the time. At the moment, it's about a $30,000 a year cash flow. So that really helps us as well. So that all comes on the top of the 414, which includes GST that we get from the grant. So that's the first time in the 26 years that we've been operating, since the doors have been open, that we've had that position where as a percentage of the grant, it's now less than 50%. So that is really good news, and we really great. And things are going really well. Our swim school, aerobics, all at record levels. Went to the pool on Monday after I got back from my holiday. I couldn't even get a car park at 9:30 in the morning. So it just shows you how busy it is with that. So that's really good. We've got a really robust reporting system now, and you will have been aware of that because you get the monthly reports, and you can see for yourselves how well that is what we're doing there. So as I say, we do have all these challenging costs with, a power alone is 170, 180,000, and it just keeps going up. But anyway, and we've got, we won't go too much into that and all our other costs, but we are within our budget this year, which is great news. So we're not underwater like we were for so many years in the past. So, and that's due also to council re-looking at our funding a year or two ago, which has brought it into much more appropriate situation. So we're really thankful for that. So just to also let you know that Philomena sitting in the back there has decided she's been offered a manager's job in a big aquatic centre in Wellington, so she's leaving us shortly. So that's unfortunate, but we're already looking for a new manager, and we have some expressions of interest. So we want to thank Philly for all the 6 years that she's been with us and all the good work that she has done. So that's I think that's as much as I wanted to mention there. So you then look at our 10-year plan. Now, one of the things that we're really appreciative of council is the two foundation documents that we needed to get sorted out. The service agreement took some time, and we finally got that sorted out with council, and that gives us a real feeling of security now that we can go forward with our plan now that we've got that in place. And also our lease agreement. Now, the lease agreement, I always thought we did have a signed one, but we didn't appear to have one, and council couldn't find it. We couldn't find it. But then when we changed lawyers, they managed to find it. And so we do actually have a signed 99-year lease. So that's given us security, because those two foundation documents, when we go to funders, they want those. They want to see them, and we haven't been able to produce them. So that's made a big difference. And we can now go forward with confidence and start building our 10-year plan, which we want to submit to council later in the year. I was talking to Tracy about it, and she said that would be a good idea. And so we want to do that. But I want to make the point right now, because I know that it was the first question that was asked last time we were here. We're not coming to council for any money. We think it's totally inappropriate for community groups to be asking council for money at this stage. You've got more than enough on your plate with and with a change in the political scene, and you've got uncertainty with your funding. So the last thing you need is us coming to you for more money. So we certainly won't be doing that. And as you can see, that we've written that down in our executive summary to you. So our 5 to 10 year action plan, as you can see it, the big thing, and we started doing surveys, and we're going to do them regularly, and we've got pie charts here, and they're really we're really starting to dig in what people want. And one of the things right at the head of the list is the changing rooms, and we can't ignore that any longer. And so that's the first thing on the list as part of our 10-year plan. But so that's at the top of the list, and you can see there the action plan below that. And one of the things, of course, is we've got health and safety with that, and then also the second thing is staff facilities, which is something that we are constantly under pressure to do. And while we certainly have made some changes down there, if you've been down there and had a look, they're certainly a lot better than they used to be. But we really need to get on with that as well. And then the other thing is pressure, ratepayer. We constantly want to reduce the pressure on requests for a ratepayer grant, and to do that, adding other facilities. We've looked around the country, and when you add these other facilities, which are mentioned there, like spas, saunas, and all of those sorts of things, they add between 35 and 45% to the turnover. So when you look into the future, and I've just been in Australia and looking at a pool there, and it's all now about lifestyle, health, well-being. It's a big change to when we designed the pool 30 years ago. So we've got to look to the future, and I think it's really exciting. We've got a new highway coming in a year or two, and we need to take advantage of that, because the future, I think, is very bright. We need to just look through our current financial difficulties at what the future is going to look like, and that's what we're working towards. And so I think that is all I wanted to say, except that you look over the page there, that we also have reached out now into the community. And I just wanted to mention, because that's a big change. So in the community benefits there is that we purchased a car a few months ago. So we're now able to, with our staff, go out around the schools. And so they are teaching water sports, they're swimming education, life skills coaching, and they're finding that really we're picking up a lot of support with that. So we want to do more of that, get more out into the district, and with water confidence and safety skills and that sort of thing. We're also expanding our holiday program. We've had outside funding for that, and we've got more people coming than we've got funding for. So that's really exciting as well. So that's all I think I wanted to say at the moment. So we just leave for questions.
Thank you for your presentation, John. And it was good to see what you guys are looking for in the future. And you've got the evidence from the surveying to back up what the pool community really want. So it's good that you've added that in there. We've got questions for Councillor Gilmore.
Thanks very much, Deputy Mayor. Thanks very much for your submission and for your presentation today. Excuse me. Congratulations on raising that extra 110,000 of external funding. I know I remember some conversations about the plans to go out and do that. So it looks like that's been really successful. Just wondering, with that in mind, and you're right, it is really, really tough kind of environment to be raising that external funding. Is there a plan to be looking to grow that further? I mean, there's some big plans that you have there for the facility, but do you have a plan to further grow that 110,000?
Well, Yeah, so,
John, could you just pop on your mic again? Sorry.
sorry. It's also my apology. I initially didn't see our mayor sitting over there, so so I apologise for that. Yes, I mean this is what we're doing with that is that's helping funding some of our staff as well. So it's sort of almost part of our operational expenses. But what we're really intending to do too, now that we've got those agreements signed, we want to go out now and start looking for major funders to help us with this program. And one of the things that we've done, AMP a few years ago stepped back after 20 years from naming rights. So we're looking at, once we get our plan formulated, as getting naming rights, giving someone naming rights. So that will be our biggest funder. And then we'll just work back from there.
Councillor Chase.
Thank you through you, Deputy Mayor. I quite like your report. I'm glad to see that you've got a lot of, you've gone out and got some public consultation. Can you tell me, am I correct in what I heard, that the top 3 things that come back from your feedback from the public was changing rooms, health and safety, and staff facilities? Is that what the community is asking for?
That's well, some of that is internal stuff. So
John,
yeah, some of that's so we're getting the internal feedback from our staff as well. So yes, if you take the combine everything, that's right. But also, of course, some people don't, if they haven't been outside the area, if they haven't visited other swimming pools and things, they haven't realised what some of the benefits are of some of the other things that we've mentioned. So, but we know by doing our own surveys of swimming pools around the country, of the benefits that they've got and how they've drawn in more people by adding those added attractions. Because we are constantly, right back all the 30 years since the trust was formed, we've been very conscious about the ratepayers' contribution and how we can, as much as possible, minimise that. And so we've got to take that into consideration as well. And, if we would never have built the pool, if we'd done a survey 30 years ago, we got a lot of people who were against it. They said, you're only a small district, we can't afford it. So we went ahead and did it anyway. And then, look what we've got. So, you've sometimes you've actually got to lead as well, which is, so it's a combination of two.
Worship.
And thank you for covering, Deputy Mayor. John, we've got it's part of the long-term plan document. There refers to some Section 17A reviews that we've got coming up. One is on campgrounds, the other is on swimming pools. Now, I know you're not a council-owned swimming complex, and I haven't talked to the chief executive about this, but how would TACT feel about being involved in that 17A review? Because one of the things that makes me a little bit nervous is we're having a look at swimming pools and their function, how they're running over the entire district, but actually we're excluding one from that, which won't be a complete review. Would you be happy to be involved in that? And then I think that too would give us the information that we need to make some good decisions going forward regarding facilities over the whole district.
Yeah, well, we have questions. Yeah, well, we certainly would. Tracy, we were involved with that original, the guy from Nelson that did a report for council, and we had a meeting with him, and but and he was looking at the whole district then and what the needs were, and he said to us then that what we had here to replace it would cost 21 million, and that it should be a hub, and then everything else could feed around that. That was what he said. So yeah, certainly we would, but that has been a problem locally. Is that getting groups together? They've always found it better to do it in Paiutua and Waipak, but we just got to work with what we've got because we've got some serious needs to get on with, but certainly we would welcome that discussion. Yep.
Yeah. Yes, I'd actually support that cause, because what you can do is you can share your resources across those our internal pools within our district. So let's say that Waste Splash could be the hub, and then you've got those resources meeting staff that can go out to other pools while they're functioning in their peak period to lifeguard those pools or provide the swim school in that area. We have slightly experimented with that, where we go to Woodville and we train their lifeguards and we send a swim instructor over there to teach for them. So we work with them rather than against them to provide services to our region, not just our Pennyberg. Thank you.
Thank you, Philly. That was really informative to know, and working together throughout the community, and maybe it could branch out even further in the future. Does anyone else have any questions for TAC? Thank you so much for coming in today and presenting. We're all appreciative of the work you guys do for our community. You all, the trust is all volunteers, and you do a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just apologise. There is a national civil defence training exercise underway at the moment, which is why I wasn't here. Sorry.
Thank you.
Good to see you, neighbour.
Thanks, councillors. Just while we wait for our next submitter, I might just adjourn the meeting and I'll brief you on the civil defence exercise. No, Matt, sorry. Okay, we don't have Liam here. I'll reconvene the meeting unless anyone's got any questions on our emergency? Okay, right. I'll reconvene. Matthew, are you happy to go a little bit earlier?
Yeah, that's good.
Yep, okay. If you want to just pop on up.
Yeah.
And just, if you can just press the button and turn your mic on.
Right, good to go. Hi, I'm Matthew Trent. I've just written a few things down. I'm not going to say anything that you probably haven't already heard, but I just wanted to illustrate how the removing of the rates of remission for uniform charges will impact on an individual basis. I farm 400 hectares in the Wetakura district. It's in 3 titles within a 3-kilometre radius. One block has no yards or facilities. The blocks are all run together with stock rotating around the 3, and there's only one house. This change would increase my rates bill by 24%, with one block facing 110% increase alone. My total rates bill would increase to $17,500 on a $4.8 million land valuation. And I should note that land valuation, like a lot of hill country farmers, was done 2 years ago on the back of a couple of forestry sales that doesn't really reflect the value of the farm. It's probably worth 2/3 of that in today's market, that is. And I've got your letter here, and like in proportion to the examples you've given on here, the closest is really the $6 million one that's paying $20,000 rates. So my $17,500 is not really in proportion. And I note that they're getting a 2.6% rate reduction, not a 24% increase. So basically I'm saying, why should one farm with one house be paying for town services 3 times? I note that my wife and I, who are the only 2 people currently living at the house, the kids have left home, will be paying $663 for the library, $393 for the swimming pool, and a uniform charge of $1,935. This is clearly a duplication of charges that I feel is unfair. These remissions were created not as a handout to farmers, but to ensure that certain services were not paid for multiple times. I believe it should be one house, one charge, where multiple blocks are farmed together within a reasonable distance. There's never a good time for a 24% rate increase, but the current timing of this for sheep and beef farming is terrible. So I'd like you to consider not implementing that change. Thank you for my time.
Thanks, Matthew. Councillor Wards.
Matthew, we've had some stunning submissions from people giving us really good examples of how this impacts on them. So appreciate you taking the time. Can you just remind me, I missed, how far away are you 3 titles from each other?
Well, the house is 3 kilometres to the furthest block, and there's another block on the side road, which is about probably 300 metres as the crow flies.
So it's within 5 Ks?
If you put a pin in the middle of it, you'd be within 3, probably less than that, probably 2 kilometres radius of, but that's not where my house is.
No.
My
Well,
house is
but
one corner,
just supplementary. One of the debates we've been having is how close is close.
Yeah.
And so a number of us are mulling over what might be the distance that if we were to review this, given some of the submissions we've heard, what might be the radius and or because I mean, example yesterday we were given was the 2 titles, their driveways are opposite each other. So we're trying to get a bit of a handle on how far is too far. So
this farm, not all of it, was in about 6 titles.
Right.
I've merged the ones that are probably 4 together. There's probably more than that. I've merged all the ones that are touching together already.
Yeah.
But left the one up the road, which has no facilities. That's, as the crow flies, probably only 200-300 metres, but the road winds around a little bit.
I'm just trying to get a bit of a feel for how far away is the next.
Yeah, and it's like the other one, I only ever had one wool shed until probably, time flies, probably 7 or 8 years ago. So everything had to come to a central yards. where I do now have 2 wool sheds, but the stock still moves, so. And it has been, the majority of this farm has been farmed as one farm for the last, well, since 1973, I think, so it's not like it's different farms, yeah.
Taking the time out of your busy day.
No problem. But that-
Councillor has just got a question.
I think, thanks, Mayor Tracy. Thanks for coming in, Matt, and thanks for your submission. These are really helpful for us. We genuinely put, these suggestions out, and we want to understand and hear the impacts, and you coming in person is really helpful as well. My question's been partially addressed by Sharon, but I was also, been mulling over how perhaps to make this work. And we've had some submissions suggesting like a 10-kilometre radius as an example, some perhaps a little bit more. From your perspective, and you've kind of talked about the fairness of the, the UAGC, what do you, in your opinion, would a 10-kilometre radius be a fair compromise?
I think it'll be ample because a lot of blocks, if it is further than that, depending on the size, they're probably, if they haven't got a house on them, they're probably going to be a smaller block anyway. So they're not going to be a standalone block. I think 10 would be ample. I don't know many farms that would have too many blocks that don't have houses on them that are that far away. Yeah, that's my view today.
Thank you.
Further questions? I think mine's been amply covered. There isn't. Thank you so much for coming in. I know, there's some real value in hearing from farmers and understanding, the locations of these and what the impacts are. So we do thank you very much for that. And we've had quite a few submissions and feedback around it. So it's been good.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Don't have Liam here, so I'm just wondering whether we adjourn for an early morning tea and see if we can come back maybe 10:30.
Very good.
Everyone the beat.
Okay. Welcome back, and I'll just go and open the door.
Sorry? Oh, yeah, not quite.
Hi, Ned.
Good morning, all.
Hey.
Morning.
Yep.
Just while we wait for our next submitter, Ed's here from National Forests and agreed to speak early. So thank you very much for that. Can I just get you to turn your mic on, and just so you know that we are recording and that so that everybody can hear.
The red button.
It's that.
Well, good morning. Yes, the basis of my submissions related around the long-term plan suggestion of the differential rate as far as forestry is concerned. I have no quibble with user pays whatsoever. And I previously done an analysis which I think Tracy had circulated to the previous council around the road wear and tear on comparing forestry with, in this instance, dairying, where you've got over a 28-year period, very similar amounts of loaded traffic between a dairying operation and a forestry operation. But the great difference is that forestry, that the loading is at one point of the 28 years at the end, and that's the time when that business actually it's the only time that business receives any revenue. So it's my contention that to front end it, i.e. through years 1 through 27, with forestry paying an increased rate over that period of non-revenue, I think it's patently unfair. I've demonstrated previously that I'm very happy with my forest operations to contribute substantially to road maintenance and stuff like that. I have no qualm with it whatsoever. There's one other thing that I wonder about, and with in the district, and some of these forests are totally related to carbon, and so then they have revenue, no doubt about that, but they're never going to be using the road for heavy extraction. So just as a manner of equity, why would they be being charged an increased loading as far as a rate was concerned? So just a few issues to roll around. Yeah, that's the basis of what I wanted to say.
Thanks, Ed. We've got some questions. That'd be great. Councillor Johns and Councillor Wards.
Thanks, Mayor Tracy. Would it be fair to say that most, particularly larger forestry operations, don't plant and harvest all in 1 year? It's not a 28-year cycle. Most of the forests are some are harvesting in perpetuity. Every year they're using the roads. And, it's anyone's guess as to what the average is, but it's certainly not a 28-year gap between planting and harvesting in most cases.
Well, if we look at the district average as far as the district representation, obviously the largest forestry participant is Earnshaw 1 and Shaw, but they in fact from their plantings in 19 So we just roll it back from their plantings in 1994, which was about when they started, through to when they started harvesting. You know, they actually started early to try and get in, so that get into a cycle. As to whether they're going to be continuously harvesting or not, I don't know, but okay, take a snapshot in time. They had probably 20 years when there was when there was no, and you know, I agree. So if they're, and in my instance too, you know, that national forests is 480 odd hectares of forestry. My contention is that you're probably, if you're looking at the output from one particular crew, you're probably not going to be, it's about 100 hectares. So call it 80 to 100 hectares is what they can actually, a fully mechanised crew as to what they can actually achieve. So you're going to have 5 years harvesting, and then there's going to be another 23 years of non-activity, effectively, no heavy transport activity. So there will be cycles, there will be time delays, there will, you know, and it's the same with Earnslaw. Effectively, they're not going to be harvesting their 8,000 or 9,000 hectares, but they're going to be progressively harvesting. My submission would be that it's on the basis that if they're going to be doing 100 hectares, or if I'm going to be doing 100 hectares, that's the time of the year, the time of the cycle that I should be charged that extra rate. Does it make sense or not?
Makes sense. From a council's point of view, it'd be very difficult to talk to every forest owner as to their harvesting schedules and determine their rating.
No, under the National Environmental Standards for Plantation Forestry, we have to effectively get a consent. And so just like we have to get a consent to plant. So that's quite trackable. You know, we are going to be harvesting this block. I don't see it as a problem at all. The main basis of my submission is this equity thing, and also it's a time when there is revenue to be able to afford it.
Tracy, and thanks, Ed. This is quite a contentious topic, no surprises there. One thing that's come clear to me, though, as we've listened and read the submissions, is the disparity, as you've outlined, between a carbon and a productive forestry, that, you know, effectively carbon forestry could sit there and no trucks would go near it. But one point that's been made, and I'm curious to just get your insight on it, is potentially with the slash, the impact on our roading infrastructure like bridges and stuff like that. If you were sitting in our seat and wanted to try and get the equity between the disparate carbon and productive forestry, how would you apply some sort of recognition to addressing the fact that there's going to be no trucks with carbon, but socially and infrastructure wise with their bridges, would that be an argument to try and apply a rating to a carbon forestry? Just curious to, is there any way we can?
Doesn't carbon forestry, which I'm not in favour of, but
Yeah.
doesn't carbon forestry by its very nature mean that they're not going to be producing any slash? They're not, because they're not harvesting. See what I mean? So even if they're in an exposed waterway, you know, I don't know, call it, you know, down the Turumia River, but they're not going to be, they're not risking anything as far as that's concerned, because they're supposedly not harvesting.
So from a, you know, given that, and you're quite right, but the social the social impact that we know that our district and others like ours, the social impact that carbon forestry is having in it on those communities. And in your thinking, is there anything that we could, or is it just don't touch it, is what you're saying?
And that's two different things. Yeah, I hadn't actually come here to address the social impact.
If you were in our shoes, given, you know, the dichotomy that we have between a productive forest with the trucks and the ones that are just going to stand there and look over the years, from a rating perspective and trying to address long term some of those implications, but yeah.
Doesn't that come back to effectively you saying, okay, if someone sets out and plants purely a carbon forestry, maybe that's a separate rate. That in itself, that could be a separate rate in itself. There's a production forest one which is, and so that impost, if you like, or that rating impost comes at harvest. A carbon forestry one, and albeit you might say it's a social response.
It has to be considered.
A community response, a social response. Maybe they pay all the way through. Don't know.
Why ask the question?
My understanding is that carbon forestry is not consented at all. No, so it doesn't have any of those standards, and Ed, you might be able to help me out here, but they don't trim or prune either, do they?
No, that's exactly right. That's exactly right, Tracy, that they don't, it doesn't get any touching. Yeah, so there's no risk of slash. The only risk would be, you know, any land movement toppling, perhaps, but going back to what Sharon was saying or querying, that becomes another, because it'll be pretty clearly identified as to whether a forest is a production forest or a carbon forest. It's pretty simple.
Councillor Gilmore.
Thanks very much, Mayor Tracy. Thanks, Ed, for coming along and making the time to provide a written response and talk to us in person. After this is finished, I'll ask a question of officers just to get some clarification or to be sure, but my understanding is under the Local Government Rating Act, we can't set rates based off income or when income comes. We have to set it based off land valuation, and I'll double check. I'm getting some nods there, which makes that your suggestion a little bit problematic, although it could be, if we had the power to do that, a good solution. But with that in mind, how else might we be able to manage this situation with you? You've already brought up, you know, the disparity with carbon farming versus production. Would you suggest perhaps a way forward might be to more look at the Wairoa example? You know, I guess there's different ways that you can skin this, and our proposal is doing this way with eroding differentials. Would you prefer us to look at a different way, or the Wairoa example?
I'm not totally a fay with the Wairoa example or any other council example. And nor do I know whether what your call it rating or levying powers under local government or whatever. Yeah, I wonder if there's something that can't be. It really comes back to land use, and I wonder if there's not something you can't do in your district plan. It's not. I know this is a long-term planning thing, but in the base document, don't know. as to other alternatives, I haven't investigated at all. I was looking at what had been suggested within the long-term plan as far as the Tararua was concerned, and made a submission on the basis of, you know, what I consider to be this, again, I can't stress this fairness and equity thing related around the payability because of when revenue streams come in. And we don't have great areas of really old forest in the Tararua.
Through you, Mayor Tracy. Thanks, Ed, for that. Ed, I'm just looking at last year, which was winter, and there was harvesting occurring other side of Dannevirke, and which was damaging roads. Would you or your industry be favourable at looking at not harvesting through the winter months, 3 or 4 months of the year, when the roads are particularly wet? Would that be a solution?
It may be a solution in some instances, but when you really get to when you get to a corporate forest size, you know, forest size, there are two or three things. One, it's very expensive to moving the gear in and out. You know, I've faced bill. I know neighbours have faced bills of, you know, in excess of $20,000 to shift the equipment, and so you don't want to be shifting them in and out. Also, as far as continuity of employment and whatever for the contractors, you know, it's sort of like asking someone to say, oh, well, or maybe wrong example. I'm going to say, so you could say to a dairy farmer, oh, well, you've got to dry your cows off and leave, and you can't bloody well milk them at all. You know, or whatever. Really? Or you're affecting their business as far as that's concerned. And, you know, as far as and quite specifically in a corporate environment, and that's what's caused a lot of the issues up the East Coast, is the returns out of forestry are all predicated and measured against a return on investment. And because there's something that all the expenditure actually occurs at the front end, and, you know, really basically the expenditure stops by about, call it year 12 or something like that. That's when the last of the thinning and things are done. Then it becomes just standing. If you were to either, you see it with people extending out the harvest, or you see it with you know, stopping them harvesting in a portion of the year, the return on investment goes, because just the time value of money just eats up eats up that ROI. And that was the reflection, that was the thing that really occurred post 88 up the East Coast. You know, in 1988 in Bowler, Tolaga Bay was completely inundated with silt. And so the government at the time made the decision that they should be extending the forestry cover out from what they had, I think it was called was it the blue line or the green line? Anyway, they extended it out. What they didn't actually think about was the consequence, and there were corporates that took it up, but they didn't think about the consequence of what an extension of time. And then that harvest up the East Coast could have been managed with watersheds protecting and things like that. It could have been managed quite easily if they'd actually provided the incentive at the front end to compensate for the degradation of the return on investment at the arse end of it, at the harvest point. So there's a whole lot of complicating factors, but, you know, what you're suggesting would affect the return on investment. So it becomes unattractive, it becomes unattractive for the harvesting crews, the contractors, because of the continuity of work. So, sorry, I don't think it's a good idea.
Councillor Sutherland.
Tracy, just a bit of a comment, Ed. You just commented on something about the time value of trees, but one of the things we've touched on other councils around New Zealand is with carbon forestry, and we've tried to grapple with this. We're doing a 10-year long-term plan, but we are looking 30 to 50 years with some of our infrastructure, which we have to do. And one of the really concerning things for me particularly is with carbon forestry, it's the what if, very similar to Tolika. The what if, when the carbon forest reaches maturity, it's all over. What the heck are we going to be left with? That's the unknown. And do we have some money in the pot? You know, we have wind blow and we have rivers, we have the forests are finished. The owners could do all sorts of things. We don't know really. They could walk off. We may be able to chop them down and use them for timber fired heating, all sorts. But it's we've got I'm thinking the unknown, the Tarawera district, we could have a huge problem of unknown with carbon forestry. So to me, we can't just do nothing. But what do we do is with carbon forestry is a concern to me. Not just about roading, really. It's about the whole cost of management of that product in 30 years' time. You know, with carbon forestry, particularly, and I'm sure that's vexing politicians and the vexing councils in these areas, and I'm sure it's been discussed in your profession too, perhaps. Yeah.
Councillor Johns.
Yeah, Tracy. Yeah, and picking up on Councillor Sutherland's comment, what we don't know is what's likely to happen in 20 or 30 years' time with some of these carbon forests. Their intentions now are plant them and leave them and take the credits, but it could well be, we don't know, that a new owner, a forest gets sold, a new owner gets it and sees it, suddenly the price of pulp logs goes up sky high, and they decide to mill or to log it. There's nothing to stop them. So getting back to your original comment about carbon forests and the equity surrounding carbon forests as opposed to production forests, we as a council don't know what the future for that particular or any particular forest is and in what year. And it's quite possible, given the shake-up that's already occurring with our new government, that the rules will change and suddenly there may be no value in carbon forests at all. So they'll just be logged. Who knows?
Agreed. Who knows? You know, the future or the long-term future of carbon forestry, I would suggest, could be quite tenuous, because as the economy continues to decarbonise, it could be it's quite likely that I would suggest that the value of carbon goes down. So, and you know, whether that's by 2050 or when I don't know, but you know, that's the projection is that currently today it's I don't know, 50 or $50 or something a tonne, but it could very well go down to a hell of a lot less. In the meantime, though, as under the emissions trading, the belief is that it actually needs to go higher to further accelerate or incentivize the decarbonisation. It's a crystal ball.
Thanks. We'll go one last question, Councillor Wallace.
Tracy, and good to see you, Ed. actually very good questions and very good scenarios, because you made two comments. One was about you have to apply for an application to plant, and then you like monitoring when you're going to harvest. And then around the room we've said that, and you said to do with carbon credits, forests, they're not going to harvest. But around the room since the beginning of the conversation, they said, well, people could harvest. So that's not fair on you guys who are production, in the sense. So they're saying that they can change midstream under the present rules or not?
They could actually decide that if they decided they wanted to harvest, but as was indicated, they see a carbon forest is probably planted at, I don't know, 1,000 or 1,100 stems per hectare. Okay. Now that's like letting those trees grow is a bit like opening up a box of matches. They're little pencils of very little diameter, very little substance. And in a production forest, so if we're looking to just have a framing regime, producing 4x2s for whatever it might be, that type of thing, we bring that down to about 450 stems. So we actually end up thinning out. Sure, you've got planted at 1,000, maybe 900 have grown. You're actually cutting every second tree out. Or if you're going to a pruned regime, you're bringing it down to a sort of 300. So you're cutting 2 out of 3 trees out, during that first sort of 12-year period. And that's to provide girth, clean wood, but girth and things like that. Now, you're never going to get that out of your carbon forest. And so that's the whole argument. That's the whole argument around what does carbon forestry do for a community? I think it does bugger all. Whereas production forest can actually do quite a lot. There's a lot of employment. They're not there right now, but we've got three silviculture crews working, and there's bloody work for Africa. Some of these guys, they got 8 and 10 guys working for them all the time. So there's revenue coming. There's expenditure. We're incurring expenditure, but there's revenue going out into the communities wherever they live. Yeah. So I don't. The appeal of harvesting currently a carbon forest would be very, very limited because of, call it the 900 stems per hectare. Might be useful for javelins, but that's about all.
Matches.
Thanks very much. That's been both valuable on the roading side, but actually I'm sure everyone's learned some from the carbon, from speaking and learning more about that as well. So thanks very much for your time and travelling in.
Okay.
Much appreciated.
Yeah.
And just check, do we have Tony MacArthur here? And Susan Walsh? Yeah. We are recording this. If I can just get you to pop your mic on, the little button on the front of the microphone, just so that everyone can hear you. One.
Getting old.
Than you. So, okay, can anyone hear me? Awesome. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Right, I'll just get into it then, shall I? Good morning. Thank you for letting me speak today. As you're aware, I am here to discuss about the recent earthquake strengthening regulations. Hi. Let's discuss first the commercial buildings. The new regulation states that all commercial buildings must have a DSA
done if you think you are aware that your building is under 34%, or you think you're under 4%. Which, let's face it, most Danny buildings are in that sort of criteria. DSAs are anywhere between 30,000 to 40,000 or more, depending on the size of your building. And that's a huge cost, more so if you own 2 or more buildings, which some of us do. DSAs let you know for certain how much your building will cost to bring it up to the new government regulation and modern standards, by taking that to a seismic strengthening builder who will give you a precise cost. Some of you here are building owners and know this. As of today, there is no government help with the financial cost of this in regards to commercial buildings. I've looked, so if there's one that I'm unaware of, please tell me. I'd like to know. To impose a regulation in the name of public safety is all good and well. Anyone can understand this. But one that is a huge expense as this one, and not back it up with any help, grant or loan by the government, is a misstep that should have been noticed and sorted out before enacting it. Maybe you can take that back to the Prime Minister. A huge cost regulation should have government support if they want this to happen, you know, as an FYI type of thing. And that would be nice. Right. I do see, however, there is a residential loan, this one here. You can apply for if your building is 2 stories or higher from Kingi Ora. This is, however, fraught, as there have been a few hundred applicants, but one yet to be accepted. This is because of the criteria. When you get to, and you guessed it, when you get to the part where it says agreed works contract and a structural engineer's certificate. Now that's a DSA. You've got to get a DSA before you can get that, structural engineers. So basically it's the DSAs where this falls down on because of the cost. No one has the amount of cash on hand and help is needed. But as it stands now, building owners are on their own. And you as a council, I understand it, are in the middle of this, getting pressure from the government to get all building percentages in your area. I know you're finding this hard. You can only look in the windows in town and notice a lot of shops have undetermined certificates and not their rating percentages. I have spoken to other building owners. I had a meeting with a few of them. Half of them are saying no because of the cost. They can't find the thousands of dollars to get the DSAs. And the other half think it's the government imposing a cost that should be an individual's decision, not a governmental one. So across the board, it was a resounding no to the regulation. However, I did not come here just to moan about this. I do have a solution to the problem which we both find ourselves in. What can we do at a local level to get the cost of DSAs down and get all DSAs so you're not bothered by the government? It's a win-win situation for the council to hire a DSA inspector on contract to do all buildings in the district at a certain amount and time frame. For example, 200,000 in a span of 2 months. That's just an example. That will have to be discussed with an inspector. How long would it take him to do the DSAs around this region? Okay, where would this money come from? I guess that's the thing you're thinking of now. I do understand that you're willing to put $2 million into a prior to pool renovation that you already have put money into. Use some of that. The rest can go on the debt that you owe to our FGA. So our rates can go down, and not up, and you'll be killing 3 birds with 1 stone on that one. You can also help out with the strengthening build if you'd like. Give low interest loans to building owners by going through your government credit loaners. But anyway, DSAs are a problem in not getting a loan from a bank or an estimate from a builder to give to a bank for a loan because of the high cost. We eliminate the high cost to owners. You get all your percentages and we get on with strengthening our buildings. If it's your agenda to save the buildings, which will save businesses and have a thriving town instead of a ghost town with empty lots and tourists driving through because there's nothing to see or special to stop for, then your decision is easy. Save the buildings, save the town. And before you say inspectors won't go for it, let's try and be positive, okay? Let's go and see before we shoot the idea down. There's no harm in asking, as I always say. If you don't ask, you don't receive. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. Councillor Wards.
Thank you, Tracy, and thank you, Susan. It's lovely to see you here. Susan and I had a bit of a chinwag at one of the mayor and councillors meetings, and I encouraged her to put in a submission given her solution-focused attitude. Is there, in the discussions that you've had with the other building owners, Susan, I mean, effectively you're suggesting front up, get the resource, let them whack through the main street of Dannevirke and get all those DSAs done. In the conversations, because one of the struggles that a lot of those owners have is getting access to someone, a structural engineer, to come and do it for a start, and the cost of that. Is there interest from your building owners that if council adopted this initiative, they would contribute to for a set fee? So you've said 200,000, but if the building owners were prepared to say, look, I'll front up $5,000 in the pot to top up if council did employ this person, would they do that, or do you think they're expecting council to carry the whole lot?
That to happen, but I came up with a solution after the meeting that I had with them. So I was actually going to wait until after this meeting to actually discuss with them. Like I said, half of them, they are willing to do their buildings. Okay, they are up and go. These are people like me. I do have a building that are newly bought, and we don't want to lose that building. Okay, the other half are basically the older owners who've owned their buildings for a long time, and they're more on the, it should be an individual thing here. It shouldn't be pressed upon us. We all have insurances. So if something does happen, the liability insurance really does cover it. But of course, we want to, I guess the government wants to prevent even it happening rather than, costing afterwards. I can bring all that to the meeting, to another meeting. I'm very sure that it'll be welcomed, especially by the other half that, want to do everything. 30 or 40,000, if we can get that cost down to 4,000 or 5,000, I'm sure they will all do that, especially if you could put it on our rates as well. That would be a help. That could be another way of doing it to help, pay for the DSAs. But 30 or 40,000 is a lot to have cash on hand when, if you're in a business, you're just trying to make, the wages and everything else, the mortgage and everything else on the building. So I'm sure no one would say no if someone came in and said, look, especially if it's free, but if it can't be helped and a couple of thousand has to be in, it's better than 20 or 30 or 40,000. And I'm sure we all would agree to that, because at the moment, building owners are making decisions on if, but maybe. They don't know. They're assuming it's going to cost 350,000, 400,000, 500,000 to do their buildings, but they actually don't know without this DSA. So I think they're making rash decisions, if that is their reasoning, because we just obviously don't know. It could be 200,000, 250,000, and you've just got to weigh that up with how much the building is worth, because literally if the building is worth less than the cost of it getting structurally done, that's going to pose a problem too. This is where I think the government, like I say, is falling short. They didn't think 2 steps ahead. And because I mean, Auckland and Wellington could get $2-3 million for their buildings, but here, in towns like this, we can't demand that sort of price for the buildings. So it's got to also weigh up, you know, with the saleability of a building as well. This is where, like I said, it needs to go back to the government, and I know they're looking at it right now. But if they don't know about that issue, they need to know about it, because that is a concern for building owners as well. Why should they put in 250 if all they're going to get back is 150 when they sell the place?
And they are aware of it. That's why that extension has been given. They've
Yeah.
also asked for rural councils to feed into that. So some practical examples around that that can help if you want to feed those through and talk to the chamber as well. They can make some of those changes, or we can suggest some of those changes, because we've been lobbying in this area for a while. Councillor Peter Beaver.
Thank you, Susan, for coming along and presenting today. Just to clear, and I am a commercial building owner as well. Now, this has been around for quite a while, earthquake strengthening and percentage rating. I just wanted to ask, how long have you owned your building for?
Yeah. So I was actually unaware of most of this. I only found out after I bought the building. I delved into it, basically. No one told me anything when I bought the building. It was bought on a private. Afterwards, I found out commercial property places like property brokers won't touch a building unless it's 60-something percentage higher to sell the building. So this is why it was sold, obviously, to me privately. This was I was unaware of at the time. And of course, my building, I got the building percentage done on an IEP. Just to know my percentage. I thought it would go under 34%, and I was correct, 16. But I'm not the lowest though. I thought I would be in this town, but no, I'm not the lowest. So yeah, so when this is the first building I've ever owned, so commercial building I've ever owned. Other ones have been houses I've renovated and sold. So I was unaware about most of what I'm speaking about today. I've actually educated myself afterwards. It was totally unexpected of me to do a business building owners meeting as well. I mean, I wasn't expected to do it. I thought everyone knew, like I did, you know, and investigated about this, but it's not clear out there, the rules. And the whole point of that meeting was to tell people about the rules, you know, get your percentages, get this, and I was all focused on get your percentages, how can we get our DSAs and all this. And it quickly turned in the meeting that half of them were like, we're taking a firm because this is government, you know, ruling over us, and it should be our decision and all that type of thing. So it kind of took me aback, because I thought, you know, at least most of us was here, and half of us was there to figure out how to pay for all this, coming up with ideas. And some of us were thinking to pay for the actual strengthening is to do a co-op. So 10 of us in a co-op sort of situation, and we all put in $20,000 to do one building. You know, if it's 250, have a limit. 250, we all put in 20,000 for their building, and then when that got the strengthening got paid for that building, then we started on somebody else's building, and then somebody else's building, and somebody else's building. So in the end, we all get done. And hopefully before the time lapsed out, but I'm sure, you know, if we told the council or the government that we're doing it, we're getting there, they'll give us an extension. But that was thrown in the pile in the meeting. If anyone who wanted to do it, attend sort of co-operative sort of setting and doing it that way to pay for the actual strengthening of it. But yeah, but the DSAs is where the buck stops at everything. We've got to get those first. Yeah.
And it's been a challenge around the council table for some time, and we have been out and talked to building owners, but that would have been prior to your going. You'll certainly understand the massive problems that are out there and some of the uncertainty towards something with government getting some better rules for you as well. But yeah, thank you very much for coming.
Yeah, what they have, you know, so they've got to think 2 steps ahead, and I don't think they've done this with this regulation, and I think we need to bring it to them. You know, if you go, it is an expensive one, and with expensive regulations, you need to give help in some sort of way, of a loan, something. Away from banks, because banks can deny the different entity altogether, and they can deny. So we need some assurance and be comfortable with that the government is backing us and backing us up and wanting to do this. If that is the agenda, is to save buildings and stuff like that, then they would have no, you know, that's no choice for them either. They need to help us with that sort of thing.
It is here, so I might have just to cut you there if that's okay. But thank you so much for coming in. That's been really, really good.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Good to see you. I might stay in. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for waiting, Sylvie. Yeah. That's the one, and you're, yeah.
Okay, I'm new to Dannevirke. I've been here about 2 years. I retired here, and I love Dannevirke. It's a beautiful place. But what I'm concerned about is the water supply. I understand that there have been problems with the water supply since July 2021. And so far, the council have done temporary fixes to the water supply without actually fixing the leak that is in there. Sorry, if I just go to my notes. So, being a pensioner, I sort of find that, you know, our rates seem to be going up, and we're on a fixed income. So all this thing for the water supply is going to be added to our rates, whether we like it or not, as well as our power going up and everything. And it concerns me that we have to absorb these costs. And added to this is that they have been directed to put the fluoride into our water, which I am strongly opposed to because of the detrimental effects on our bodies. Recent studies have shown that ingesting fluoride results in skeletal fluorosis, dental fluorosis, endocrine disruption to the thyroid and the pineal gland, and it's implicated in many autoimmune diseases such as arthritis, kidney disease, and diabetes. And it is also said to diminish the IQ significantly, which exacerbates behavioural disorders such as ADHD and autism. I've recently been reading reports, from the JAMA reports, which is a scientific journal. And this talked about the neurobehavioural problems in children skyrocketing, and also too the IQ drop of between 5 to 9 points in children, which is quite alarming. The fact that our body, our kidneys and our liver can filter out 40 to 50% of the fluoride, but what happens to the rest, and it gets stored in our body, and it permeates every cellular structure in our body. Anyone that has got arthritis, and it's because it's going to affect the most vulnerable people in our society, like the elderly with increased fractures, and the babies and the children with their IQ, and the fact that they can't regulate the dosage really alarms me. What I would like to see is that these phosphate industries, the onus goes back on them in disposing their neurotoxic waste. Why is it being filtered through our bodies? And it is really alarming to think that the director from the I can't remember the director of health, sorry, I'm having trouble speaking, I've got a glass of water, made that directive. I worked in a government department, and I actually left a government department because of the directive over the COVID mandates as well, and I still stand by my decision to do that. It just alarms me that this fluoridation has been forced upon us without our consent, and it is wrong. And all the latest studies that are coming out are showing how harmful it is to our health. So I know my voice will be a drop in the ocean, and it's probably not going to be very effective, but I felt compelled to actually address this with the council. Sorry.
No, that is absolutely fine, and we always enjoy hearing from people on all sorts of matters, so you're welcome to do that and share with us. Can I just check, have you shared your views with the Ministry of Health?
No, not yet. I have just been basically researching things through the internet. I just think the fact that I am a senior citizen now, the fact that I'm a senior citizen now, and I mean, all these health problems that we are probably going to experience, particularly the fact we can't filter out the stuff. To buy a filter for fluoride costs me $145, and that's every couple of months. So it's an added expense to someone on a limited budget. And, I value my health. I hope I'm here for another 20 years. But, Chair, I mean, with the health system burdened as it is, why are we adding more things? Why are we allowing this risk when there are other methods to prevent tooth decay? Like that SMILE program has been effective. Why don't they promote that? Why don't they stop the sugar?
Okay. Are there any further questions? Right. Okay. Thank you very much for popping in to see us. Look, I can just get you to do the same, Jim, just to use your mute button there at the front so we can hear you loud and clear.
Might have pushed it once or twice in the past, Tracy.
Just
Well, nice to see you, Your Worship, councillors, you, Brian, the CE, and all of the staff that I see around there. Some of them I recognise, particularly Raj. Look, I'll gloss over a lot of the submissions that I'd commented on, and I'll spend the time that you've allocated me predominantly to give you a background of how the money that was allocated by the Eastern Central Community Trust to the Bush Multi-Sports Complex as an offset to the Y Splash pool that we had here in Dannyvirk. And this is directly as a background for the work that you're going to face in terms of the Paeatua heated swimming pool request. So essentially the background is that I was sitting as a district councillor and I'd been appointed by the Minister of Finance to the board of the Eastern Central. The Eastern Central has a fund which came predominantly from the sale of the Trust Bank shares. So we received an allocation, I think from memory, it was around about $109 million. And so with some skill, we set about investing these monies and we achieved a one-off currency gain of $20 million. It was just one of those fortunate things that happened at that time and probably won't get repeated. So out of that, we agreed to separate a sum of $8 million, which was then provided through what we call the Shooting Stars project. We then set up a process of allocating it to the various TAs that fell within the area, the Eastern Central area. So this district here received an allocation of $365,772. Around the table, we sat with 12 councillors then, and a hell of a lot of acrimony that was going on between North and South. And so the constant badgering came from the South to say that we gave everything to the North. I turned to David Lee, Paeatua councillor, and said, David, look, let's try and break this thing that goes on. And it was very, very vehement too. And so I said to him, we've got this fund of money. I'd like to support the whole thing going to the South. And let's see whether we can do something. What have you got down in the southern area? And after a bit, we came up with the concept of a sports complex. So I persuaded the rest of the councillors around the table to agree that all the money should go to Paeatua and the southern wards. I went down to Paeatua and met with a chap called Kelly Parker, and his wife was Marie, and she was with the Innisdean legal practice. They were very helpful. We also had support from Garrick Murfitt, who was the Horizons chair at that stage. We held some public meetings, and then we got buy-in from the locals down there. Peter, you might remember some of them. Ellison, you might. The benches were put in, a whole lot of money was given. Now that money became the seed capital, which allowed the Bush Multi-Sports Complex to go to other funding providers. And from there, they got a very good hearing from lotteries and other places. And before long, there was an amount of $1 million as a start. Then the sports teams came on board. The rugby team in particular was in recess. Players had gone to Ekatahuna, they'd gone to Palmerston. They agreed to sell the grounds, put that money in as well, and then the players started to come back. And it's been the most outstanding success of all of the Shooting Star projects throughout that region. So with that, it started to break the nonsense down that we had around the table here in council. And it's been a healing process that's continued right through. We have Y-Splash up here, and it costs an arm and a leg, as you know, as councillors, to maintain it. They have their own committee, and they do a pretty reasonable job with it. And you couldn't argue that it's been a worthwhile venture for perhaps some of the things that attract people that come to town and decide to live and reside here. And I'm not saying that Paeatua isn't entitled to something, but I don't think, given the times that we're actually in now, and after 45 years of being a banker, and seeing the pain in society and the businesses that are out there that are trying to exist, paying rates is not a simple exercise any longer, particularly for businesses. You are charged with the obligations of running our district, setting our rates. You haven't got an easy target. It's a very difficult one. I can feel the weight that's on your shoulders. If you proceed with something like assisting the Paeatua swimming pool there, it'll be at a stage where I don't believe that this district can actually manage it, handle it. So I'm putting it to you clearly that that's not something that I should see being given the tick of approval right at the moment. When our economy lifts and when our population base is much higher and you can more adequately collect rates to support it, yes, it will. But at this point, I don't think it's a fair impost on us. You've got the trade-off there. You've got Y-Splash here. That's about as much as I can see the district is capable of supporting. I could go on for a lot longer, but that's in a snapshot what it is. I want to just pass on that point. I want to say to the councillors, you're doing a very good job overall, from what I can see. You've got plenty of challenges. The roading job that you're achieving, and through you, Brian, the alliance arrangements are fantastic. The quality of the roading work out there and the repair work is as good as you could ever get. And I'm pleased we took that decision to extend the roading contract longer so that Alliance could invest in the machineries that you've got there now doing that work. Prior to that, it didn't have the resource. It does now, thankfully, through that. So that's been a great aspect to watch and look at. And the Gabriel response work is just incredible. So you're all doing a pretty reasonable job there. So on that note, I won't challenge you any further, but be careful because I'm watching. Connectivity, you're on the bloody spot there, Tracy. You keep working on it. And you, Alison, it's not good enough either.
I have some good news for you shortly. Thank you for sharing that, because actually the Shooting Stars project and the history did come up, so it couldn't have been better timed coming in and sharing that with us. Councillor Gilmore, you got a question?
Thanks very much, Tracy. And thank you very much for your submission and just for your knowledge that the history lessons. The history lessons very helpful for me as well. So I really appreciate it. Excuse me. I suppose my question is, and this might be asking what you would do in our situation, you know, knowing as a councillor, perhaps you have quite a lot of different competing information coming towards you. And one thing that's jumped out to me with the Pahiatua pool is the knowledge that the current outdoor facility is potentially pretty stuffed. And knowing that the cost to fix that pool or replace an outdoor facility potentially could cost more than the ask for a brand new covered Pahiatua pool. Knowing that funders would be quite unlikely to fund or put money towards a like-for-like replacement. They seem to be happy putting in a significant amount of money for this new covered option. What would you do if you were faced with that dilemma, sitting at this table of still potentially having to put in a significant amount of money for exactly the same level of service, or potentially having the opportunity to put in that similar pot of money for an increased level of service?
Thank you for this question, Scott. It's quite simple. It comes back to affordability. And the answer is you haven't got it. You can't do it. You can't do it, Scott, in this given time. The population isn't great enough to support that requirement. Over the hill is not far away, and you've got all of those facilities. It's a sad thing to say this to you, I know, and it can be received in a hurtful respect too. But it comes down to what can your pocket afford? And it's so, I've found over the years when you've had to make the hard decisions, you look at what you can afford to do. And this district can't afford it.
And thanks for that. No, I don't find it hurtful. I certainly appreciate your thoughts and your advice on it. Just to further clarify that a bit of what we can afford, and I guess this is the dilemma. Would you advocate if the current outdoor Pahiatua pool was stuffed and we weren't able to fix it? Because at the moment we're pumping money into this pool that keeps on leaking. Would you advocate, because we don't have the money, that Pahiatua does not have a swimming pool?
That's simply, Scott, without beating around the bush. Yes, I've been to the pool, I've seen it, I understand it. I know the pain that's out there, and you're asking people to pay money towards that can't really afford to. There's going to be pain like you haven't seen for a very long time, and it's unfolding quite rapidly. So you can't afford it, you don't do it.
Councillor Franklin. Okay. Are there any further questions for Jim? Thank you very much, Jim. It's been both lovely to see you and great history lesson. And we certainly have come a long way from those days. They were pretty strong. So it's good to have that reminder.
Yeah, it's lovely to see councillors. You're a lot more united, and you don't have the scraps and the arguments that we used to have.
In front of you, Jim.
You anyway. Look, keep it under control, man. Good to see you all the time. See you all.
And continue. We do have a couple of councillors that have just popped out for a minute, and actually I've got three. I might just adjourn to come back. reconvene back. Do we have, I think it's Nikki Kilmartin? Okay. That's helpful. If we move on to Emily and Pukaha Mount Bruce, welcome, Moira. Welcome. Yeah, absolutely. Can I just get you to use the mics? We are recording this, but it just helps everybody hear. That would be awesome. It's nice to see you.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Emily ahau, ko Te Kai Whakahaere ahau o Pukaha. I think I've met most of you before, but in case we haven't met, I'm Emily. I'm the General Manager at Pukaha National Wildlife Centre, and today Moira Paiwai is supporting me. Moira is on the Pukaha board and is our Finance Committee Chair, so thank you, Moira, for supporting me. I'm also happy today to have some support in the back here from our Rangitane partners, and I'm very grateful for that also. So thank you for the time and the opportunity to say a few words. I won't read my submission verbatim at all. I'll assume that is taken as read, and we'll just say a few words and invite you for questions at the end. Firstly, I'd just like to stress that Pukaha Mount Bruce Board is an entity that is acting in a role as kaitiaki of a very special taonga of our region. And we do this on behalf of the people of Aotearoa and acknowledge the gift of Rangitane and Mana Whenua who've gifted Pukaha to the people of Aotearoa as part of their treaty settlement. So we take that responsibility very seriously and work in challenging times, in the good times and the bad, to ensure the long-term sustainability of the organisation and the outcomes that we achieve for the community. What I would say is that there are very few organisations like Pukaha that can work hand in hand with the community, with local central government, Mana Whenua, and the wider community to deliver on economic, social, environmental and cultural outcomes. And in particular, over the last 5 years or so, we've made some enormous investments and enormous inroads into each of those aspects and taking us to the next level. And I'd like to thank Tararua District Council for partnering with us along the way. Without your backing, without your support and belief over the last few years, we really would not have been able to open the doors of Te Whare Wānanga or Manukura, our new Environmental and Education Centre. Happy to report that the new centre is going brilliantly. Bookings are really, really steady, both from an education perspective, but also community and other groups using it for events and meetings. We've hosted a number of small-scale conferences and the likes. And so for the first 10 months since opening, I'm really pleased to confirm that actually from a financial perspective as well, it was the right thing to do. We've made a net profit of just short of 50,000 in the first 10 months. That is, however, excluding interest costs. So we'll put that to the side for the moment. The base financial model is really, really strong. But as we expected at the outset, we did forecast for some level of debt, but we have had to borrow more than what we anticipated originally. So that debt is an issue for us that we need to address and address quickly. And Moira will attest, we're working very hard on our fundraising plan to continue to pay down that debt as best that we can. With regard to the Council's long-term plan proposal for community organisations to shift to annual contestable rounds of funding, we would like to present an alternative proposal. There are lots of reasons for that. Larger organisations, larger community organisations, as you can see from the numbers in this report, spend an enormous amount of time running around finding grants and operating funds through fundraising and the like. And there's an enormous amount of cost to that for us. To need to continue to go back on an annual basis does mean that, one, it makes annual planning very difficult, but also that extra cost and time takes us away from the core business that is protecting the ngahere. So from a timing perspective, coming back each year with cap in hand is not an ideal situation for Pukaha. We acknowledge that all local governments really got some tough decisions to make, no doubt about it. Like all organisations, Pukaha as well has a year ahead of some quite tough decisions to make around our overheads and operating costs, which we are working hard on and hope to be able to make some good inroads and efficiencies over the coming year. What I would like to propose is that we continue with our multi-year agreement, but at a slightly reduced rate from the current $14,000 a year, dropping it down by 28% to $10,000 a year. It might not seem like a huge amount of money, but for us to have that assurance that early in our financial year in winter, when we are least busy and have the biggest cash flow pressures, it would be very, very welcome to receive that grant. We were, by this time as well, with our funding agreement for the loan that's in place, due to start paying interest on that loan. What I would like to propose and respectfully ask for consideration, that those loan costs are introduced gradually over the next 3 years. And that would help us to pay down the debt that we currently have. We have some commercial debt. So at the moment, $900,000 with Westpac, which is on about 8.5%. We have successfully secured another loan from Central Energy Trust at interest-free terms, which has been incredibly helpful. That's only just recently come through, as it has enabled us to refinance commercial debt. So, they're saving us an enormous amount of interest cost each month, which is an absolute godsend for the year ahead. So our only commercial debt that we have in place is that $900,000 loan. Our forecast for annual performance for this financial year is actually around the break-even mark, which I'm really, really happy about, given the environment that we're in. Our commercial income in terms of tourism and hospitality income is tracking really well. We're at about 10% ahead of our visitor numbers for last year, and a similar, in fact, slightly more than that in terms of commercial income that we've been able to generate from those visitors. So I'm really pleased with how it's tracking. And like I said before, the wānanga itself, the event centre itself, is making a positive contribution. So all in all, with an optimistic approach and really dedicated and committed marketing program, we're confident about the year ahead, despite the obvious challenges that the community is facing around the cost of living and the economic environment. We really don't want to increase any of our pricing for entry. One of our core values is accessibility to the community. It's a special taonga that we have increased visitation to by making it more accessible. And we really don't want to revisit that pricing for that reason. In fact, the annual open day is set in our diaries again, and we just will try and create some other events throughout the year that could be koha or no cost entry at all to engage the community with what we do. A good example is the upcoming celebrations on the 6th of July, which will be a full day with a koha type entry for the community to participate and celebrate our 1-year anniversary of opening of the whare, our 2-year anniversary of signing our partnership agreement with Rangitane, and also the opening of an art studio, so a weaving studio as well, will be opened on that day. So it's a really big day of celebrations at Pukaha. So it's a pretty important time in our history. So without further ado, I talk far too much. I'll hand over to you and let you ask some questions.
I do apologise, Councillor Chase has had to leave, just a bit unwell. I've got one. So you sent me an invitation. I've purchased some tickets to go to a fundraising dinner. Is that invitation to purchase tickets open to all the councillors as well? I wasn't too sure by the invitation card.
Absolutely. So please pass that on. First in, first serve. So there's only 120 tickets. So make the Tararua presence strong. I highly recommend it. Yeah, it's going to be a good night.